Simon, great to be sitting with you once again as we come to the conclusion of our Simplification Stories mini-series. How are things?
Very good, very good. Yeah, episode 5. Who'd have thought it? It seemed to whiz by recording of the episodes with Steve in episode 2 talking about the recruitment transformation and onboarding at NICA, and then Lisa from Holland and Barrett in episode 4 giving us all that insight around building their own software versus buying. So in between, we've segmented with our own views on simplification to wrap up in episode 5 today.
Indeed, indeed. And just before we do get into it, Simon, I do have to say, happy birthday to Rethink Productivity. 10 years old. It's a magnificent achievement. So a nice way to celebrate as well this week.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. There's a few things coming out over the next month or so for people to watch out for. So some one-off branding to mark the event and a few other things that will be coming out. So keep an eye on our LinkedIn pages. But no, it feels, if I reflect for a second, not 10 years ago since we started. Been an amazing journey. Worked with some great companies, got some great people working for us, met some great people like yourself over that journey and stayed in touch with. So hopefully the next 10 years goes as well, if not even better. But I wouldn't change it for the world. Wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, it's awesome. It's a brilliant achievement, and congratulations once again.
Thank you.
So as we do reflect on the simplification stories, what have been some of your key takeaways? You touched on it there. We were talking about lean in the first episode. We're talking with Steve Leach around some of the shifts they've made. What have been some of your key takeaways from perhaps those first couple of episodes?
I think that there's some consistent themes around keeping it simple, communicating, senior leadership buy-in. Sometimes it doesn't have to be rocket science, and I know we kind of talked off air about this a number of times. It doesn't have to be big and complex. It can be a wide-scale change that's maybe simpler, or looking at things from a different angle, different perspectives, all that kind of stuff. So simplification in its essence should free up time or create cost-saving opportunity, but it doesn't have to be rocket science.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's changing things, right? There's that classic phrase, the way it's always been done, or This is the way it works around here. And I think simplification is at the very essence of changing that mindset and saying, actually, you know what, we could do things differently here. And I think it can be scary, but it's exciting. I mean, I think as you look at different people and how different people respond to change, there is obviously a huge amount of variability. Personally, I feel, tell me otherwise, that I'm quite pro change, readily accepting it and so on. It's certainly that's what it feels like. I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think I am good with change, but that doesn't mean when it gets closer or you start to think about the unknowns, you don't, get that bit of apprehensive feeling, or what if it doesn't work, or you can come up with all the negative connotations of why you shouldn't do something to almost fulfill the desire not to. I'm probably at my best and most creative thinking about change and helping people with change or talking about it, but it doesn't mean it's not scary. And sometimes that's the elephant in the room, I think, of people see other people breeze through change and they handle it so well in the personal life and work life and all the other things that they throw over them, aren't they amazing? But actually, I think those people, if they're really honest, would say, yeah, on the outside, I'm the old swan in water. On the outside, I'm gliding across, but underneath, I'm pedaling. And it's just the way you deal with it. So people's exterior coolness or calmness, accepting of that, don't underestimate the fact that we all cope with it in a slightly different way, and we'll all be feeling some sort of tension, nervousness, however you want to describe it, as we go through that change curve journey.
Definitely. And I think, I've certainly seen on a number of projects many times over where you think it's the simplest change, yet actually it's that change management piece that is so important to be able to dispel some of the fear and help people through it, help encourage new routines, new rhythms, new sort of the new norm, shall we say?
Yeah.
And I think that change management piece, as you look through simplification, is absolutely huge, and we've touched on it throughout our conversations actually over the last 4 episodes of the podcast. And I think it's very interesting how much attention is actually paid or not paid to the whole change management piece. And I think Steve and Lisa, as we were talking to them, I think have done a pretty good job actually, to be honest, in terms of taking people on the journey. Whether it's around recruitment, whether it's around the new IT systems and developments that Lisa was talking through, for example. That fills me with optimism, but I think there's a huge amount more that collectively as an industry we can do.
The word journey is the bit to pick up on there. And by definition, that means that people will be in different places at different times.
Yeah.
So, typically what we want as kind of, let's call ourselves retailers, is to define or to say that we want to change something. So we're going to make this process simpler because we're going to put a new piece of tech in and it takes out 50 button presses, let's say. What we really want to happen is for somebody to go around, put all the new tech in, everybody tip up on day one, press all the buttons in the right order, put more customers through or have more time to put stock out, do other things. That's what we want to happen. But actually, talking about generations, there might be some generations or people that are tech savvy pick up really quickly, don't need any training. There might be some people that want a training manual. There might be some people that want training video. There might be some people that want to be coached through it and have an expert that they can go and talk to if they can't get it right. But actually what we all want as change managers and project managers and influencers in that kind of space is for just everybody to get on with it, which isn't going to get you to where you want. So yeah, for me, that journey is really important to understand. I think everybody will get there, some quicker than others, some in a slightly straighter line than others, some may meander left and right for quite a long time and then come back. But as long as we're really clear on what the destination is, and then we have a number of different tools and ways to help those people that want to do it in a slightly different way, I think gets you to the end. I see real challenges when it's forced down a particular route.
Yeah.
Whether that be, everything's going to be done by e-learning. Maybe had to do that in the pandemic, but the world's opening up. Or everybody's going to do it by train the trainer. Everybody's going to watch this video and then they're tick the box done. I think you've got to understand that whole training needs and people's different styles and behaviours or wants and needs to appreciate the fact that they'll get there, maybe in a slightly different way, but as long as we get there with the right quality and the right output, actually we've achieved what we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, totally. I always like to think about change management taking into account a different perspective. So looking at it almost like we look at marketing to consumers. You wouldn't expect to put out, let's say, a social ad and have 100% conversion on it, right? Nor would you put out just one social ad and say, this is our entire marketing plan, this one advert, which is going to bring in everything. But instead, what you do is you create, a number of different touch points that are that each touch point has a different purpose and across a number of different mediums. So, you may have some videos, you may have some, TV ads, you may have social ads, you may have billboards, you may have influencers, etc., etc. And it's all there to take a consumer on the journey to get them to visit your store or visit your site and eventually convert them into a customer, of course. And it's just the same from a change management perspective. So if you are launching a new simplification or maybe a more radical change as well, by the way, you've got to take people on that same journey, to use the word, that has multiple touch points, that has multiple formats, so that, like you say, you can appeal to different mindsets, I guess.
And again, not everybody's going to get it right first time. Some might not get it right second, third, even fourth time, which is again where you need those different layers of catching them. So to be able to then say, so we've tried this way, didn't quite work. How's this going to work for you? because it's just not realistic to expect one touch, one stop, one way to work across. We're talking about organisations with either stores across countries or lots of stores in a country. For them to get it right that first time, one shot, it just doesn't. Life doesn't pan out like that. Let alone implementing simple or even more technical, challenging changes in an environment where you absolutely do get back to your point at the start of this is how we do it round here, or we don't actually do it that way here because of X, Y, and Z. Trying to take out that ingrained behaviour and change it is really, really difficult. However good, well thought through, whatever it is you're trying to land is, that's the real art in all of this.
And I'm intrigued to ask, Simon, you touched on it a couple of minutes ago, some people don't get it first time, second time, third time, fourth time. And there is this feeling that some people will never get the change, right? That they'll never get fully on the bus. What's the best approach in that instance? How many times do you try and convert someone before you actually say, no, I'm not going to be able to do this? And then what should you do? What are your thoughts?
Everything's a conversation. Now, clearly those conversations can take very different routes depending. If you can understand why somebody can't do it, i.e. they've not got the right training, they've not got the right equipment, they've not got the right ways of thinking about it, then you can educate, help inform, and come to the right path to help them. So actually, as I said before, you might be trying to say, do this by e-learning, but that person may not be particularly good on a computer and would like to do it, in a test environment or a live environment shadowed. So that there's means and ways. Sometimes I think you tend to find long service becomes an issue. So people have been there for ages in an organisation, seen this before, done that before, didn't work last time we did it, or the time before we did it. So what's different about this time? Why is it important to them as an individual? Why is it important to the team that they work with on a day-to-day basis? And why is it important to the organisation as a whole? Maybe they missed a briefing, maybe just the way it was briefed just didn't hit the spot with them. So I think there's lots of coaching, understanding pieces. Now, clearly, we've all not got the time to do that forever. So that there does come a point where there's probably some more direct conversations around, we've tried all these avenues. It's not optional. Do you understand how to use it? Do you understand the process we need you to follow? Yes, yes, or yes, no. Here's some remedial training, or actually you've kind of just got to get on with it now. How can we make that easiest for you? Because people will resist change for a number of reasons they know, and probably for a number of reasons they don't know.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Sometimes a kind of short and quick change is helpful for some people, almost take away the ability to do what they did in the past, so force the process. Sometimes that's not always practical. Sometimes, if it's optional to revert back, people will revert back to type.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think obviously it depends on what the change is. If it's a safety-based change, then compliance suddenly becomes a lot more important than if it's, I don't know, perhaps a particular way of addressing a customer at a checkout, or a proposition to make at a checkout, for example.
And I think having ways to feed back, challenges to the new ways of working, or even tweaks or updates to make it even better is helpful. So again, people with long heritage in organizations will have seen something similar, or what they feel to be similar before. If their voice is heard, again, sometimes that can take away the frustration. Well, last time we did this, after 6 months, it didn't really work because of. Doesn't mean it's going to change, but actually if you acknowledge you've heard it and go back and say, yes, and thank you for that, these are the things we've got in place, or thanks for that, but actually it doesn't change anything. You don't necessarily need to act on it, but people feel like they've been heard, and therefore hopefully those negative connotations go away, or they get to the point of, well, I've told them, I just need to get on with it.
Yeah, I've got it off the chest, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's a very nice segue, by the way, thank you, to reflect on then the next couple of episodes that we did. So episode 3 and episode 4, where we, of course, we had Lisa on talking about some of the fab work that she's leading at Holland and Barrett. And I think, in episode 3, we were talking about people having good intentions, and it's that same piece, right? In change management, there is a reason why someone is rejecting or not accepting, I should say, the change. And it's a question, how do I find out what that reason is? Because again, I'll go in, my going in position is people are not doing it just for the sake of being difficult, right? They have a genuine concern. It's not that it's like, no, I just don't want to. Sort of surly teenage.
Yeah. It's finding a way to unearth that uneasiness or resistance that makes them feel comfortable. And again, as I said, people will do that in different ways, and some people might not even know. It's just the overwhelming fear of doing something different kind of cripples them from doing it.
Yep. And again, it's sort of as we were talking about in the third of our episodes, we had that list, right, of key ways to help stay with the volatile retail market. Those 5 items on the list were around being agile, being flexible, taking pivots, being trial ready, and building momentum as well, which again helps with that whole change piece. And I think we touched on it with Steve, and certainly we touched on it in episode 3. So I think, yeah, it's a great reflection.
Yeah, and for me, that momentum piece is kind of the center of a lot of that, because if you're building momentum with simplification and change, actually people become more comfortable with it because they've been through the cycle of doing things different. They've seen the world doesn't fall apart at the end, that actually hopefully a lot of it makes their life simpler in terms of operationally and better for customers, or frees up time. I think the kind of one thing we've probably not talked about too much is return on investment. So again, lots of simplification projects will be designed in a way to either extract money out of the wage budget, the labour cost for that organisation, or to push back time into drive service and therefore sales and build revenue. So, and some may be a mixture of both. I think that the real challenging ones are where maybe a project is what I'd call hygiene factor or foundational. So it's something that the business should do because it will make it a better place for the future. Maybe that's for colleagues, customers, or to build other projects on top of. So we need this to be able to do X, Y, and Z projects in the future. Very few businesses can pallet that cost, if that makes sense. So very few businesses will do something and say there's no ROI on this, it's just the right thing to do.
Yep.
So finding that balance of those, what I call foundational projects, and the cash saving or the sales increase that's on the back of it is probably the trickiest place to be in all of this.
Yes.
Because everybody knows it's the right thing to do, but somebody's got to pay for it.
Yeah, I can think of certainly some projects that I've worked on in the past where it's absolutely the right thing, but that ROI, that sort of tangible benefit that builds a solid business case, is the most challenging element. And it's challenging because you can't do the maths, right? You can't make 1 + 1 = 2 and get that ROI, but that then gets in the way of everything else. It means that you get prioritized down the agenda in a lower way. It means that it's a struggle to justify each and every stage of pursuing that particular simplification project. And I think equally, on the flip side, I think that simplification projects do have a lot of opportunity for proving the ROI, actually, because it's, a simplification is not a total rewrite. So you know a lot about the situation already. You know a lot about the status quo, and you can see the measures that you want to be dialing up or down, rather than a more fundamental transformation where perhaps you're wading into the unknown a lot more, and you just don't know what those sort of numbers, what that performance is going to be like. So I think it kind of swings and roundabouts on the ROI piece for me personally.
I agree. It's a difficult place to be when you're kind of backward engineering a business case to give the ROI when everybody kind of knows it's the right thing to do, but maybe doesn't drive that level at this point or sets us up for kind of future success.
And I'm sure we can all reflect on examples where we've perhaps been involved in a reverse engineering challenge, whether we thought it was right or not. Probably not. Where it can drive the wrong behaviors, right? It can drive you to, round numbers up, make some dodgy assumptions, not then thinking from a change management perspective about all the good things that do need to happen to be able to get the real change through and delivered. Because, if you're talking spreadsheets and ROI and stuff like that, it's easy to put down £1 million or 10 million quid, or put in a number for whatever benefit you happen to be driving. But if it's not delivered, if it's not realized because you haven't done the change effectively, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. It's just a number on a spreadsheet, but a quadrillion quid benefit. Woo, yeah. I think that's also interesting, again, reflecting on the conversation with Lisa, where we were talking a lot about build versus buy. I think that's an interesting one, because it's a very different investment outlook, I should say, between the build versus buy. One is obviously perfectly tailored, and you can really tinker it and tailor it, but it costs a lot more upfront, but perhaps cheaper to run in the long term, and more opportunity to, again, continue to optimize in the long term, versus you get it right off the shelf, you adjust your processes and your business to squeeze into that. I think it's an interesting discussion that Lisa must have had at Holland & Barrett, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those where time will tell. So what does it look like in 12, 18, 24 months' time? Because I can see the beauty of wanting to go and just pick something off the shelf and use it. I can also see the attraction of changing the colour of a button overnight, or the position of a button, or the name of a button, without needing to go through an expensive external change control process and then testing and QA with a third party that will bill you by the day out, whatever that metric might be. So I can see the benefits of both. I can see there's probably pitfalls in both approaches. Certainly the market seems to be more buying expert software off the shelf and implementing rather than build your own. Mm-hmm. But time will tell. Time will tell. So I'm kind of on the fence on this one, because I can see the pros and cons of both. So I'm not really sure what side I sit on. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a very interesting perspective to well, it's essentially about forging the future of the company, right? So I think it is an interesting decision point for everyone to be considering about what's right for them and what makes them unique, what makes them stand out in the marketplace. And then for a final little pivot, I wanted to talk or touch on innovation, because innovation is a huge piece for simplification, because it's arguably the complete opposite of the way it's always been done, right? And I think innovation really depends on someone being open and impartial and looking at the way things work, the status quo, and being brave enough to say, hang on a second, I think there's a better way of doing this. And I think where we are at the moment, just emerging from the pandemic, we are needing so many people to be really, truly, honestly and impartially and bravely looking at operating models and at business propositions and at ways of working and at processes and all of the different parts, and saying, is this the best way? Is it right? And if it's not the best way, or there is opportunity, which one should we go after first? I think that's a huge opportunity for all businesses going forward.
Yep, external perspective is a good thing in that, I think, as well, because sometimes in organisations you only know what you only know, or can only see what you can only see. But don't get me wrong, lots of organisations now have people that have come in there that have worked in different organisations in that field or outside of that field. But again, they'll only see what they can see. Can you benchmark it? Where's the real challenge? And I think I increasingly see, I think there's an advert on the telly that talks about if you think big, think bigger. People fixing a problem, but then you have a conversation with them and you kind of say, that's really good, amazing, that'll fix the problem. But actually, if we step back and just look above what you're trying to fix, there's something even bigger to fix here that almost means what you're trying to fix will go away as a consequence of that.
Yep.
So sometimes it's, again, stepping back, really difficult again in certainly a fast-paced retail environment to get that breathing space, time, sometimes money for an external perspective. But all it takes is some of those conversations or data points or bits of insight or bits of benchmarking to say, yeah, you're going to spend a lot of time and money fixing this, but there's a bigger prize at play, which will sort that anyway. So why don't we have a look at that and see how that could work?
Very, very true. And I think it's also an interesting challenge as you start to think about, actually we could do this bigger piece and this bigger piece. And suddenly, where do you draw the line, right? Because you can't say, right, we're going to, well, maybe you can. Depends on your business and the situation you specifically find yourself in. You can't say everything is up for change, because it will likely swallow you whole if you don't have anything that is out of the scope, shall we say.
Yeah.
So it's knowing where is the best, the optimal, the most rewarding point to draw that line, to take, your simplification and drive it home. Is it a simplification, or is it actually an evolution, or is it a fundamental shift? It's huge decision to make, but an important decision to make, because if you don't decide, you either do nothing, which doesn't help anyone, or you're going to try and do everything, which means it's bound for failure. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think for me, there's kind of couple of obvious places. So where, if we take a retail organisation, where do you spend most of your labour money? Typically, it'll be in stock tills and management are probably the three key ones for most retailers. So that should give you some clues of where potentially the biggest reward is, or the biggest benefit to go after. Clearly, customer plays a part. So what are your customers telling you? What is their behaviour doing, or how's it changing? Or how do you want to force that behavioural change in a controlled way? And a good example of that will be self-checkouts. So I think we'll see a big move towards less manned checkouts in the future in lots of stores, certainly in discount retail and fast moving, and more self-checkout. Clearly there's a cost benefit. Clearly there's a throughput benefit, as in it's the customer's time scanning it, not yours. But you'll always need some manned checkouts. But does that checkout need to be static? Could it be mobile? Could it be on an iPad? Questions about how you take cash and card and all those kind of things. But that for me is how you almost gradually, gently force the customer behaviour. 10 years ago, we didn't self-scan, we didn't shop with an app, we didn't shop on pretty much many self-checkouts. Now it's just the norm. And if you think back, I think back, no one ever taught me how to use a self-checkout. They became easier. Some frustrated, some have voices that annoy me, some don't scan very well.
Self-checkout.
Have you? There you go. Some weigh, some don't weigh, some you put it down and it tells you to pick it up and you want to throw it through the window. But ultimately, it's a bit like your iPhone, isn't it, or your Android phone. You get it out of the box, you turn it on, you don't need a manual. So customer behaviours evolve that way without much education. There's a lot less people manning self-checkouts in retailers these days than there were 5-10 years ago.
Yeah. And I think that, as we wrap up our conversation here, I think that's a brilliant way of thinking about simplification, actually, because a true simplification and a true change is done in such a way that it's easier to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing. And I think if it's designed in the right way and it's focusing on the right challenges and the right problems, then that is going to be a much more of a natural shift to ease consumers through, to ease your colleagues through, to ease the wider business through. It's going to be much more natural, much more successful, And then actually, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable for everyone as well, which I think is important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Path of least resistant normally rings true in most projects, doesn't it? Once you start to get into the detail.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, listen, Simon, this has been a wonderful series with you. I've really enjoyed all of our 5 episodes diving into simplification and simplification stories. And yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for joining me on this journey and exploring and sharing so much insight. Thank you.
No, it's been wonderful to catch up on episode 1, 3, and this one 5 to close out, and then clearly Steve and Lisa joined us in episodes 2 and 4 respectively. So some great stories. I think there's probably lots more to touch on potentially in a series 2, but we'll have to let the listeners wait and see if that materialises. It's been a pleasure to catch up as always. Hopefully those that have listened to all 5 episodes have got something out of it. It's provoked some thought, some ways of thinking differently, or sparked some things to go away and look at in their organisations, because that's the true power of these kind of conversations, is provoking thought and driving some action from it.
Definitely. Couldn't put it better myself. That's brilliant. Great. Well, thank you so much, Simon, and I look forward to catching up with you very, very soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ollie. Take care. Speak to you soon.